I'm 79 years old, and my father has been dead for 11 years now, and I still haven't finished the conversation I was trying to have with him my whole life. That's the thing I want to say first, not because I need you to feel sorry for me. I don't. I've had a full life, a long one, more than most people get. I'm saying it because I spent the better part of 60 years trying to earn something from a man who had already decided somewhere early on that I wasn't quite what he'd hoped for, and I didn't see it clearly until it was too late to do anything about it. My father was a quiet man, not gentle quiet, hard quiet, the kind of man who could sit at the dinner table with 4 children and say almost nothing and still make everyone feel like they were being evaluated. He worked at a textile mill for 32 years. He came home tired. He ate, he sat, he went to bed. On weekends he worked in the yard or fixed things around the house. He was not cruel. I want to be careful to say that. He never hit us, never screamed, but there was a coldness in him that I spent my entire childhood trying to melt, and it never melted, not for me anyway. I was the oldest, a son, and I think I understood even at 7 or 8 years old that my father had ideas about what a son was supposed to be. I wasn't sure what those ideas were exactly, but I was sure I wasn't meeting them. He'd watch me read and there'd be something in his face, not disgust, just a kind of absence, like I wasn't fully registering. My younger brother was different, louder, better at sports. My father would watch him play baseball in the yard, and I'd see something open up in my father's face that I never saw when he looked at me. I didn't hate my brother for it. I just started working harder. I thought that was the answer. Work harder, do more, be better, and eventually he'll see it. I carried that belief into everything. I was a good student, then a good employee, then a man who worked 60, sometimes 70 hours a week, because the working felt like the only language my father and I shared. He respected hard workers. He said that often a man who works hard can hold his head up. So I worked. I kept my head up, and every time I accomplished something, a promotion, a raise, a new house, I would tell him and he would nod. Sometimes he'd say something like good or that's fine, and I would take that home with me like it was a prize and set it on a shelf and look at it for a while before realizing it still wasn't enough. I married at 26. My wife, Carol, she saw it early. She'd say sometimes gently, "You don't have to perform for him, you know." And I'd tell her she didn't understand, that I wasn't performing, that I just wanted him to be proud. That's all. Just once, clearly, without me having to guess. We had 2 kids, a daughter and a son. And here is the part that I find hardest to say. I was not fully present for them when they were small, not because I didn't love them. I loved them enormously. but I was so consumed with building something my father would recognize, a career, a reputation, a visible life, that I would come home at 7 or 8 at night and they'd already be in bed or nearly there. And I told myself that was how it had to be, that I was doing it for them. But I think, if I'm honest now, I was doing it for him, trying to become the version of myself he'd finally look at differently. My son is 52 now. We are close, but there were years in his childhood where I was mostly an idea of a father rather than the actual thing. He's forgiven me for it, or says he has, and I believe him mostly. But I notice sometimes when we talk that there are parts of him I don't know, whole rooms I never got access to because I wasn't there when the doors were open. My daughter lives in another city. We talk on the phone. It's warm what we have, but I know she learnt not to need me too much when she was young, and that lesson stayed with her. You can't unteach a child something like that. My father turned 70, then 75. He slowed down. His body started failing him in the ordinary ways bodies do. And I would visit, drive 2 hours each way, sit with him in his living room, and we would watch television together and talk about the weather and local news and whether the road into town needed repaving. That was our conversation at the end. The road into town. He died on a Tuesday in February. He was 81. He went quietly, which people said was a blessing. My mother called me at 6 in the morning. I drove down. By the time I got there, he was already gone, and I stood in that room, in that house I'd grown up in, and I waited to feel something resolve. I thought maybe in death there'd be some kind of completion, like the story would end and I'd understand it, but it didn't work that way. What I felt was not grief exactly, or not only grief. It was more like the sudden awareness that a door I'd been knocking on for 50 years had just been permanently sealed, not opened, not answered, just sealed. And I stood there realizing I had organized a significant portion of my life around knocking on that door, and it had never once opened, and now it never would. I drove home that day and sat in my kitchen for a long time. Carol brought me tea. She didn't say much. She's always known when not to talk. The months after were strange. I kept starting sentences in my head that were addressed to him, things I'd thought to tell him, updates about my life, small victories I'd been saving up to report, and then remembering there was no one to report them to, that there had never really been anyone receiving them the way I'd hoped. I've thought a lot since then about what I was actually looking for, and I think if I strip it down to its simplest form, I just wanted him to see me, not applaud me, not reward me, just see me as I was and find that acceptable, that's all. A nod from his particular direction that said, "You're all right. You turned out all right. He may have thought it. I'll never know. He was not a man who said such things." and I spent 4 decades assuming that if I did more, achieved more, became more visible in the ways he valued, he'd find a way to say it. And now I'm 79 and my knees hurt and I sleep about 5 hours a night, and I look at my grandchildren and I see time in a different way than I did when I was 40. Time used to feel like something I was moving through. Now it feels more like something that's been moving through me, and most of it has already passed. My grandchildren, there are 4 of them. The youngest is 6. I watch that boy and I think he will not spend his life wondering if I see him. I have made a point of that. I sit on the floor with him. I let him show me things that bore me a little, and I pay attention anyway because the paying attention is the whole point. That is the thing I didn't understand for so long. The paying attention is not a prelude to something else. It is the thing itself. I'm not telling you this so you'll feel sorry for me or think my father was a monster. He wasn't. He was a man made by his own father and his own circumstances, and he likely gave what he had available to give. I understand that now, but understanding it doesn't change what it cost me, and it doesn't change what it cost my children. If you're young enough to still have your father living, I'd ask you to think about what you actually want from him, not in an abstract way. Specifically, because sometimes what we want is so simple that we're almost embarrassed by it, and so we dress it up as ambition or duty or responsibility, and we spend years chasing a complicated version of something that was really very plain. And if you have children of your own, I'd ask you to think about what they're waiting to hear from you, not the big speeches. Those don't matter as much as people think. The small, plain moments, those are the ones they'll carry. I have some time left. I don't know how much. Enough to sit in the garden when it's warm. Enough to watch my grandchildren grow a little more. Enough to call my son on a weekday for no reason and just talk. That's what I do now. I call and I talk about nothing, mostly about small things. And I stay on the phone longer than I used to, because I understand now that the length of the call is part of the message. My father is buried in a cemetery 20 miles from where he was born. I visit sometimes. I stand at the marker and I don't really say anything. There's nothing left to say that would land anywhere. But I don't stand there angry anymore. I stand there just a little sad for both of us. 2 people who wanted something from each other that neither one knew how to ask for or give. If any part of this stayed with you, I'm glad, not because I want anything from you, just because then at least this meant something to someone, and that's enough at this point. That's more than enough.